Paul comes and he makes a strong point in his argument in explaining what was really said in Jerusalem by putting a focus on Titus. Titus and him in Jerusalem. That was a major thing, I believe, in that time. Let us just read Galatians chapter 2 from verse 3 to 5. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised, and that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. Now Paul comes and he is really adamant at what was taking here. You can see his tenacity. You can see that he was not going to change what he believes. And as we have said in our explanation of verse 1 and 2, he was not coming to submit his gospel to the people in Jerusalem to see as if what he is preaching is the truth. No, he was coming and he was bringing his point of view so that those people that disagree with his point of view could agree with his point of view, so that he would not run or had run in vain, meaning all the churches that he has planted, that would not go waste, or in his future that whatever he will do would go to waste, because people will come in from the big shots in Jerusalem and preach a message in his area which get people away from the truth. Now he comes and he says that these big shots, and now I'm just using my own words here, these people that seem to be of power and understanding, I brought Titus with me. I took an uncircumcised Jew right to them, and none of them, none of that inner circle compelled Titus to be circumcised. So what he's saying is, he's laying a foundation in that what he believes, those people also believe. That Peter believed it and James believed it. That the inner circle, the elders and the brethren, the people that was of great authority there, that they actually believed this. Now, the reason why Paul would do this is so that if there would be a message that comes from James or Peter, or even if it would be by Peter himself, that contradicts what Paul believes, that he can make the point and say, well, that has not been so when I was with them. They have changed. They have been under a wrong influence. They've changed. They're bringing another message. Or that he could say, should people preach in the name of the church in Jerusalem, or say, I'm sent by James, or I'm sent by Peter, or anything like that, that he can say that they are liars because, if they preach a message of circumcision, they can say they are liars because when I was there, I took an uncircumcised Greek with me and they never compelled him to be circumcised. So can you see what Paul is doing here? Paul comes and he wants to tell the people in Galatia that the message they hear is either one of two things. It's not something that Paul preached to them. It is not that Paul has changed his doctrine. Neither is it that Paul had a wrong doctrine. And should it be somebody that comes from Jerusalem and preaches it to them, it can be only one of two things. It is either that those people are false preachers that are simply there for other reasons than the true reason, or that the people changed their minds, but that it wasn't like that when he was there. And we find that Paul hasn't changed his mind. So he goes on and he says here that Titus, in verse 3 there, that neither Titus, who was with me being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And now he goes on, he talks about a tension that there were about circumcision. And he says that there were people that forced Titus to be circumcised, but it wasn't the apostles. It wasn't the leaders of the church. It wasn't James. It wasn't Peter. It wasn't the elders. It wasn't them. He says that it was false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage. So he says that there were people that came in private, and I think they were of the sect of the Pharisees. In other words, Pharisees that got saved, that didn't let go of their radical view of the law. And they now came in and saw, what are these people doing? What are these believers, Paul and these people that came in, what do they believe? Let us see if we cannot get them to follow our way of doing. And they came in and spied out the freedom, see what they believed, for the purpose of now bringing them into the Pharisaic way of belief, which was just simply a radical law-based belief. And the way I take it here, also then kind of mixed in with Christianity, which Paul would declare as false brethren. In other words, not true Christians. They're coming in the name of Christianity. That is what he says here. And then he goes on, he says, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. So we find here that should there be any allegations that Paul agreed to circumcision and that the Gentiles should be circumcised, that he makes it clear that he never submitted for an hour about that. Now, in my reading of this, I kind of get the idea that there was a lot of inside information in what went on in this conference that Paul had with the leaders there. There was a lot of inside information being spread to Galatia. Because why would Paul come in verse 4 here, and he would say, you know what, let me just tell you the truth. There were people that forced us to circumcise Titus and to preach circumcision. There were people. Why would Paul say that? I guess that there was a message that went to the church in Galatia that was telling them, you know what, there were people that were telling, we told, and I think it must be some of these false brethren that came in unaware, that came to Galatia to influence the people in Galatia so that they would be circumcised and then follow the sects of the Pharisees and mix in Christianity with the Pharisaical law passion that they had. So what he says is there were people that forced us, that wanted to force us to become part of their group, but we didn't submit to them for an hour. And this is what Paul says. So Paul sticks to the truth, and he says Titus went up there. He wasn't forced to be circumcised by the real brethren, true Christian brethren, the apostles as well as the elders. They didn't force him to be circumcised, but that there were a group of people. And he calls them false brethren here. Now, I don't think it means that they weren't Christians. I just mean that what they were seeing and how they saw it was false. Because there are Christians that believe that you had to be circumcised, and you can't say, and Paul would say that is a false doctrine. That is not true. It's not the way it's supposed to be. So the point I'm making here is that Paul is saying we were never forced to be circumcised by the true brethren, yet there were some scaly guys there that might be the people that are now coming to you people in Galatia and brought this lie. But we didn't submit to them, not even for an hour. And then I want to end off with a beautiful thing he says here. He says, and the reason why they didn't do that is that the truth of the gospel might continue with the Gentiles. That the truth of the gospel might continue with the Gentiles. So he said, I didn't submit to them because I want you to continue to walk in the truth. Again, making his point that this message of circumcision and following of the law is not the truth. That is Galatians 2 verse 3 to 5.